Round two, ding ding, let's go. Oof, I thought I'd come here to give a talk, but I found myself true to my Indian roots, running down the hall Bollywood style trying to get this presentation. But well, here we are. Close your eyes, exactly. So let's get back to that. So let's start this. So back to it, take a deep breath. And Chiang Mai, close your eyes. Now I want everyone to think of a color. Any color is fine. But just take this minute to kind of visualize that color really deeply. Think of what that color is going to be looking like if it's a shade darker. Now think about what that color is going to look like if it's a shade lighter. Think of objects of that color now. What would it be like to touch them? What's their texture going to be like? If this color was a fragrance, what would it smell like? Think of foods of this color. Think of fruits. Think of vegetables. If you were to bite into this color, what would it taste like? And now imagine yourself just diving into a pool of this color. How would that make you feel? And now take a deep breath in, and exhale and open your eyes. Now just to get a quick vibe check of the room, how many of you thought of the color red, or any shade of red? Raise your hands. Awesome. Any blues out here? Okay, predictable. Blue is the most popular favorite color of people. Any yellows and oranges? Okay, wow, I think that just beat blue. Green? Purple? Black? White? Any other color I didn't mention? Okay, we're gonna talk. So yeah, what just happened over here? We just take this one decision and then we created this whole experience around it in our heads. And as humans, we love to attach meaning to things like that. So that's exactly how humans build meaning, and that's how brands are formed. We're going to be tapping into exactly this. So hello, Chiang Mai. My name is Nivit. I run a design agency called Supercharge that focuses on brand, website, and app. We worked with large international companies, as well as we worked with pre-seed startups that have gone to raise tens of millions of dollars. I tap into design by looking at my background through user experience, through technology, as well as through cognitive psychology. I'm also a creative at heart. I'm a travel blogger, and I do have my own fashion brand called Nomad Heart. And my goal, my mission in life, is to reach 1 billion people through good design. So enough about me. Why are all of us here? We're all here for the brand identity blueprint. And today what we're going to be breaking down is what does it take to build a solid brand identity that does all the speaking, all the work for you when you're not in the room. I'm going to be talking about 20-something things today. But what I need you to do over here is focus on the 3 that resonate most with you and take them back home and implement it by the end of the month so that it pays dividends for you by the end of the year. So let's start by looking at the differences between brand identity, and branding. So what's a brand? Brand is the perception that other people hold of you, of your product, of your service, of your business, of your personal brand. Brand identity is everything you have control over, everything that's tangible about it. So this could be like your logo, your color scheme, the way you shape, the way you show up, the way you dress, your fonts, your tone of voice. And branding is the bridge between the two. It's all the work you do to constantly pair up your brand identity in ways you want to be perceived. So why does branding matter for remote workers? I think all of us in this room know that we do not have the luxury of making in-person impressions. All of our touch points, almost 100% of them, are probably digital. From the first time someone sees our LinkedIn profile, to the first time someone goes to our website, to the time that someone puts their credit card down on our website, or when they sign a contract, it's almost always digital for us nomads. And if there are any salespeople and marketers in the room, I think one thing's very clear is that if I give you a weak brand or a brand identity to work with, I'm going to make your job 10 times harder. But if I give you a strong brand and a strong brand identity to work with, your job is 10 times easier. And over here, if people haven't figured their brand identity out, That's completely okay. The thing over here is anything is better than the defaults. So as long as you're intentional about crafting a simple identity, that can take you a long way. It's all about putting in that little bit of effort to look more professional and more polished. Now I'm going to do a little audience poll over here. So I'm sure everyone over here has a friend who likes coffee. We've got 3 coffee brands over here. We've got this bright yellow oak and bond coffee brand. Then we have this really earthy, rustic packaging in the middle, option B. And option C, we've got this jet black, sleek Colombian coffee brand. Now, as an audience poll, again, just first impressions, whatever screams out to you, which of these would you buy for your friend? So anyone who would buy option A, please raise your hands. Okay. Option B, raise your hands. Oh, wow. Okay. Option B is for me also. And then option C, raise your hands. Okay, so it seems like B was the most popular, then C maybe at about, I'd say, 30% of the room, and then A at about 10% of the room. So where I'm getting at with this is there's no right answer over here. The only right answer is if not to be all 3 at once. So this tends to happen a lot when founders are starting their journey and they're trying to figure out their brand identity is, where should I go? What should I pick? And the truth over here is there are probably 100 right answers for you. But the best answer is just sticking to any one of them and building your brand over time. Because the longer you work with a brand, the stronger your identity gets. So again, one thing to think about brand is it's not about what you like, it's about what works. Scratch that. It's not about what you like, it's about what you can make work. And let's add a dimension to that. It's not about what you like, it's about what you can make work with whatever you have, all your resources, but also you got to craft this for your audience. They're the ones who are going to perceive you through your brand. And this brings me to the bottom, to the base of my brand identity pyramid of positioning. So what is positioning? If we strategically have to look at it, it is what you're building, who you're building for, and why does it even matter to them? Let's take an example of Airbnb, a company that has positioned themselves very wonderfully over the years. So what do? They're a community-driven marketplace for unique stays. Who are they for? They're for travelers who want to go beyond the regular, traditional sort of tourism that hotels provide. And why? Why do they want to do this? What sort of value do they add in people's lives? They want to create this sort of community sort of feeling. They want everyone to feel home in different corners of the world. Now let's take a traditional, let's say, remote business example over here. So if you're running a social media agency, what are you? How can you position yourselves? You can say you're a creative multimedia partner. Who do you serve? Now this gives you the opportunity to niche down on a certain industry. So for example, over here we can say we work with health and fitness brands for Instagram. And why does this matter? This helps us drive authentic community engagement and helps us tell engaging stories. Once you figure out your positioning, it's so much easier to work through a brand personality. And what does that mean? So if your brand were a person and if it had to show up in a room, who would they be? So there are 3 lenses to look at this through. So the first is the persona. I would say try crafting your brand persona as a movie character. Are they, your coach or your mentor guiding you through life? Are they that annoying little sibling? Are they that main character rock star? Are they an anti-hero? You get the opportunity to kind of create this persona for your brand, and I think that's such a wonderful exercise. The next is the presence. So say your brand had to walk through these grand doors and walk into this auditorium. How would it make the room feel? Would it make the room feel energized, supported, calm? These are things to think about. And the last is the promise. What is that one thing your brand would not compromise on? And this is where you really tap into brand values. What do you care about? What does your brand care about? What does your audience care about? So one thing to know is if you're working through business, if you actually flatten it down to its core basics, you're essentially providing value to someone or solving a problem. But at the end of the day, people don't bond with products. They bond with personalities. So here are some adjectives over here. Feel free to take a photo of this. So what this is really doing is it helps you kind of expand into different sort of descriptors that you could tap into for your brand. So what I would say is pick any 5 of these. I wish I could squeeze in more, but we're lacking space. So if we had to craft a brand right now, let's say we want to craft a high-energy, Gen Z sort of startup brand. The 5 sort of adjectives that we could potentially pick are, let's make it magical, let's make it radiant, familiar, intense, and inventive. But let's say we want to be more contemporary, we want to be more traditional, we want to be more conservative. We could be wise, secure, graceful, supportive, and powerful. Once we figured out our personalities, we can tap into color, because color triggers emotion like nothing else, definitely stronger than words. Like, think of every time you've seen a stop sign. You see the color red first before you read stop. And if you're consistently using color, it can increase brand recognition by up to 80%. Now, let's take this example over here. We've got a metallic red can. I mean, we know what this is. Everyone knows this is Coca-Cola. You don't have to sort of, mention any sort of logo, any writing. And now let's flip it. Can anyone in the audience tell me this brand, if it's blue? Pepsi, there we go. So yeah, that's what color does with branding. It really helps build recognition over time. And when you're tapping into colors to figure out which ones you should use, really tap into color psychology. So for example, blue tends to be a lot of people's favorite colors. That's why 70% of multinational corporations use blue, because it's trustworthy, it's stable, it's calm. When we tap into something like red, now that is intense, it's passionate, it's fiery, and that's why fast food brands like to prey on that color. McDonald's, Domino's, KFC, it's all red because they want to feed on hunger. Yellow and orange are more vibrant, they're more jovial, they're more community-oriented. Green, as we all know, are just on the lines of organic, wellness, health, nurturing, nature. Purple is majestic, it is royal, it is wise. White is clean and intentional. It is clear, it is very meditative. Black is loud, bold, sleek, and luxurious as well. So when you're forming your color palette, think about how you're going to be using these colors intentionally. And when you're forming a color palette, I would say pick about 3 to 5 colors. Anything less, you don't get the flexibility to play around with it. Anything more, you've got too much on your plate and it's hard to deal with. So when you've got these colors, I would say break it down into a 60-30-10 rule. So 60% of the time, show up with your primary colors. This is what your brand's really going to be represented through. 30% of the time, tap into your secondary colors. So this kind of helps you add some sort of flavor, some sort of extra personality to it. And then 10% of the time, show up with your accent colors. So this is a high contrast color that you could use to immediately draw attention. So you'll see a lot of people's call to actions, or when they're highlighting certain words, will pop up in their accent colors. And when you've got these colors figured out, I would say add dimensions of shades there. Because when you have shades, it really helps build depth. So you could tap into aspects such as motion design, having your text in different colors, borders, but you're still going to stay on brand. And one thing great about shades and having different colors is accessibility. There are about 100 million people in this world with visual impairment, and having strong accessibility really helps your brand getting perceived. So we've got 2 examples over here. I would say it's definitely clearer to read this one versus that one, and that is because the contrast light text has on dark background, and vice versa. And I think one thing we all know is that if your brand cannot be read, your brand does not exist. Let's talk about words being read and transition into fonts. Because of course, your words can say something, but your fonts say something else. Every font tells a story. Now, let's say I walk into my lawyer's office and they've got their font in Comic Sans. I'm getting the fuck out of there. It's not going to work. But if we're using a scribbly sort of font for, let's say, a children's book or a children's brand or a playground, now that fits the context. So I would divide fonts into, I'd say, 4 basic categories. So first is the serif fonts. It's kind of like your typewriter, your Times New Roman. These are these characters with little hats on them. So I like to see them as people in 3-piece suits with a hat on. Then we've got your sans serif fonts. So these are like your plain, bold, minimalist ones. So this could be like Arial, Helvetica, Poppins. And then we have script. Script is more flowy. It's like it's handwritten. It adds that human touch that I love. And then there's the decorative brands. So these are more expressive, more unique. You can really shine with personality and get bold over here. So when you're picking your font palette, you could either pick one very diverse font that goes all the way from ultra thin to extra bold. So you could have your headers in extra bold, for example, but your subheaders in ultra thin, and your base in just the medium or the regular style. So again, fonts like Helvetica, Arial are great for that, or Proxima Nova, Poppins, the list goes on. Or you could pick two fonts. So over here, we have the headers in a bold, expressive style, a serif style, and then we've got our base font in a very regular sans serif style. So it creates enough contrast and diversity to be flexible with also. Or again, if we tap into the 60-30-10 rule, we can throw in an accent font, which allows you to get a little bit more expressive if you have the room to be creative. And now that we've finished, I think, 4 parts of this brand pyramid, let's look at the tip of it, and that's the logo. A lot of people think a brand means a logo, but no, the logo is the icon that stands for your brand. It is that main stamp of yours. So a question I always get is, how do I pick a good logo? So say you're trying to design your own logo, or you're working with a logo designer. How do you kind of evaluate it? And I would look at it through 3 lenses. So the first is it simple? So by this I mean is it using less than 3 colors, less than 2 font faces, and maximum of 1 icon? One thing I want to say about color is if your logo is heavily relying on color, it's probably not doing a good job because every logo should be able to stand alone in black and white. So that's what I mean by simplicity. Next is it memorable? What I mean by this is if I show you my logo for 10 seconds and then take it away and give you a piece of paper and a pen, could you roughly sketch it? Does it leave that sort of mental footprint for you? And then third is it adaptable? Now here I'm talking about scale. What I mean by this is your logo going to look good on an app icon, but is it also going to look good if I blow it up on a billboard? Now let's take a look at some examples here. So again, here's a logo for a luxury travel company called Panache World. Here's that base standalone logo. But here's a logo of theirs, a variation, if we're going to be using it on their website navigation bar. That's horizontal. And here's an even more horizontal and slimmer version, let's say if they have to squeeze it in at the top or the bottom of a letterhead. Here's a standalone icon that really represents what they do. This could work for like an app or a favicon, for example. And then we have a standalone word mark if they just want to use their fonts. And then we have an emblem. So this is, again, if we want to go maximalist, blow it up big. So what we've kind of seen over here is a logo design system. So usually people think logo is just one thing, but a logo is part of a larger logo design system that adapts to context. So if you just have a logo, think about ways of how you could extend that to a logo design system. So does my logo need meaning? This is a question I get all the time. The answer is a big fat no. It doesn't need meaning. Meaning is built over time. Now think about Nike in 1971 when they came up with their logo. Did it mean excellence back then? Not at all. Over time, because of everything they've done over the years, it means excellence for what it is now. So again, you can have meaning, but I would say don't overthink the why. I would say meaning is developed over time, but again, focus on being memorable. Focus on something you could build a brand around. That's more important. But also, it's important to have fun with your brand. Now let's take a look at these 3 awesome examples over here. So one is Twitter. Like a bird and blogging don't have anything in common, but I think Twitter did such an excellent job by drawing that metaphor between a bird's tweets and 160 characters, and then Elon did his magic and ruined X. Then we have Apple. I mean, apple's a fruit, but if you Google it, the laptop pops up, so capitalism, yay. But at the end of the day, the Apple logo, back in its day, stood for anything that was anti-corporate, creative, throwback to Newton dropping an apple on its head, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have MailChimp. Now, I would give $1,000 to anyone who tells me what a chimp and a newsletter have in common. Goddamn nothing, I think. But either way, newsletters are such a dry and technical space that MailChimp sort of adds this fun personality to it. So again, your brand doesn't have to have meaning. I think you could build a really fun brand without one. But also, don't make your logo do too much. I have a lot of people trying to be like, hey, can we also add this, and also add this, and also add this? The moment you do that, it's not really good, because if you like a pair of brown shoes and black shoes, and you're like, I like both, and you're wearing one brown shoe and one black shoe, you look like a goddamn clown. And I don't want your logo to look like that. So yeah, don't make it look too much. Don't make it do too much. Just one concept is good. Do one concept clearly. So it's just some quick do-it-yourself logo hacks. So number one is, again, you could just have two clean font styles, one on top of the other. Really simple. You want to add a good touch to it, space out the letters. There are so many luxury brands out there that just get away with this. It's I can't believe it. And then you could frame it. I think this adds some sort of dimension. Could be in a rectangle, square, circle, whatever you please. And then you can add some color to, express what your brand really stands for. Or you could selectively use color to draw attention to certain parts of your logo. Or, again, you could have a simple initial logo. You could just take your initial or initials and frame it in a sort of a shape. I think KPMG, EY have built very recognizable and memorable brand identities through tricks like this. Or you could get creative with shapes. So here we have a circle with two triangles in it, both pointing upwards, representing an arrow for growth and a tree. So again, they're very simple ways to get stuff like this done. Another hack, if you're on a low budget, is Pinterest typefaces. So if you go to Pinterest and you search for logo typeface, it's going to give you access to such a sexy library of fonts that if you pay a license for, which is minimal, you can really run with that for a while. So once you figured out your brand identity, where all can you implement it? So I would say across all digital touchpoints, you could do it across your website, social media, ads, but also across physical stuff such as packaging and print. But also when you're working with brand partners, let's say if you're hiring a bigger team, if you're working with other collaborators, the moment you hand your brand identity off to someone else, they are allowed to speak your language in a shared way, which has intention with it. So I would always say give your identity room to grow. And that's mainly because, again, let's follow the 80-20 rule over here. Follow the guidelines 80% of the time, but 20% of the time, allow your brand to have fun, to kind of tap into all these different trends going on and be creative with it. So again, the goal over here is impression, not perfection. It is recognition, not perfection. It is connection, not perfection. But there's one last thing. There always is one last thing. So over here is, goddamn, as digital nomads, we have this beautiful privilege to see different parts of the world and immerse ourselves in all these wonderful cultures out there. And I think we should tap into our creativity over there. Let's look at these cultures and see what we can draw from them. So here's an example of Morocco. Morocco's brand identity to me is so damn indigo, and it's so beautifully rustic. I absolutely love it. And then we have Vietnam, our neighbors over here, which has this deep primary green, a lush primary green, but secondary colors of red and yellow. Then we have Portugal with this amazing dark blue ocean, but its primary is orange, which is instantly recognizable. And where I'm kind of going with this is, here's a brand identity that was inspired by the rooftops of Portugal for a handicrafts brand. And here are two websites that were inspired by the deep green rainforests of Panama. And here's a brand identity that was inspired by Uzbekistan's monuments, by seeing how you can use small patterns and colors that are repeated over and over again to create these monumental effects. So we've got this beautiful world, and if we're going to be building brand identities, I would say tap into some of your favorite places to get inspiration from them. So in general, I think that's all I have for you today. So when you sit down and you want to start thinking about your brand identity, let's tap into what we did at the start of the talk, where we closed our eyes and we did this visualization. So I would urge you to do the same for your brand. Imagine it, feel it, and then start building and growing it. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much. If you want a quick cheat sheet, here it is, QR codes. Thank you.